You've been lied to about exercise after 70. The punishing routines that served you for decades are now undermining your health. Your body is changing. Ignoring this truth courts disaster, not dignity. The conventional wisdom is backward. Stop exercising so much after 70. Do these three things instead isn't just advice, it's a biological imperative. Your remaining years demand a different approach. The science is clear. Your body knows. The question is, will you have the courage to adapt? Number one, why traditional exercise fails the aging body. Your body after 70 is telling you a profound truth that most refuse to hear. I've watched countless men destroy themselves trying to maintain routines designed for younger bodies. This isn't nobility, it's denial. After 7 decades, your cellular machinery operates under different laws, and these laws demand respect. The recovery systems that once worked overnight now require days. Your tendons, those miraculous connectors, have lost their elasticity through no fault of your own. This isn't weakness, this is biology speaking, it's undeniable truth. The testosterone that once flooded your system, promoting rapid healing and adaptation, now flows as a trickle. Ignoring these realities isn't persistence, it's arrogance. I've seen this pattern repeatedly in my clinical work. Men defining themselves through physical capacity, then breaking down when that capacity naturally diminishes. It's as if their very identity collapses with their bench press numbers. This attachment represents a profound failure to integrate the shadow of aging, a rejection of the inevitable transformation we all face. The fitness industry perpetuates myths that are downright dangerous for men in their 70s. No pain, no gain becomes all pain, no recovery in the aging body. The CrossFit mentality that serves a 30-year-old becomes a pathway to the orthopedic surgeon's office for a 70-year-old. This isn't speculation. The incidence of exercise-related injuries in seniors attempting high-intensity workouts has reached epidemic proportions. Behind each statistic is a man who believed the lie that his body should respond as it did decades ago. The modern fitness cult worships at the altar of intensity, ignoring the wisdom of ancient movement traditions that emphasize sustainability and harmony with one's stage of life. There's something deeper happening when a 70-year-old man insists on training like his younger self. It's not merely physical stubbornness, it's existential denial. The high-intensity workout becomes symbolic armor against mortality itself, but this armor is an illusion, and wearing it exacts a terrible physical toll. The aging man who can't adapt his exercise habits is often the same man who can't adapt in other areas of life. He's rigidly clinging to patterns that no longer serve him. This psychological inflexibility correlates strongly with depression and isolation in later years. The refusal to modify exercise becomes a metaphor for a broader refusal to accept life's changing seasons. What you're really seeking isn't the same muscular development or cardiovascular capacity you had at 40. You're searching for meaning, vitality, and physical autonomy. And paradoxically, clinging to outdated exercise protocols undermines all three. Your body speaks a language you must learn to interpret. Joint pain that persists more than 48 hours after exercise isn't weakness leaving the body, it's your biological system screaming for attention. Chronic fatigue following workouts signals hormonal systems under duress. Sleep disturbances after intense training days reflect stress hormones remaining elevated when they should be cycling down. These aren't signs to push harder. They're communications from the deepest wisdom of your physical form, telling you that the old approach no longer works. And the price of ignoring these messages isn't paid in muscle soreness, it's paid in systemic breakdown. The traditional approach to fitness after 70 isn't just suboptimal, it's actively harmful. The obsession with high-intensity interval training, heavy resistance work, and endurance challenges designed for younger bodies creates a perfect storm of injury risk. This isn't a minor concern, it's often the difference between independence and assisted living in your later years. Conventional exercise models fail to account for the fundamental changes in tissue elasticity, hormonal environment, and recovery capacity that define the aging body. Your connective tissues become less forgiving. Your joints have accumulated decades of wear patterns. Your nervous system requires more time to adapt. These aren't weaknesses to overcome, they're realities to respect. The solution isn't to abandon physical activity, it's to transform your relationship with it. To evolve your approach in alignment with your evolving body. To replace the outdated paradigm of youth-oriented fitness with a more sophisticated understanding of what serves the aging body. Number 2. movement patterns over muscle building. I see him every morning at the park, a man in his 80s moving with the fluid grace of someone decades younger. He isn't lifting heavy weights or gasping through intervals. He's performing movements that mirror what our ancestors did for millennia. This isn't regression, it's wisdom embodied. Your body wasn't designed for isolated bicep curls or leg extensions. It evolved for integrated movement patterns: walking, carrying, squatting, pushing, pulling. These fundamental patterns connect to your nervous system in ways that isolated bodybuilding simply cannot match. The fragmentation of movement into constituent parts is a modern invention that serves the young adequately but fails the aging body catastrophically. The obsession with muscle isolation represents a kind of reductionist thinking that pervades modern fitness. We've pulled apart what nature designed to work together, and in doing so we've created dysfunction precisely where integration is most needed. This is particularly devastating after 70, when coordination and neural efficiency become far more important than muscle size. When you abandon natural movement patterns for isolated exercises, you're not just training inefficiently, you're actively dismantling the neural pathways that keep you functional and independent. This isn't opinion, it's biological reality written into your nervous system over millions of years of evolution. Not all movements are created equal, particularly for the aging man. There exists a clear hierarchy of need that you ignore at your peril. The foundation isn't strength, it's balance. The pinnacle isn't muscle, it's coordination. Between these lies a spectrum of movement capabilities that determine your functional age far more accurately than any calendar. Walking, real walking mind you, not the shuffling compromise many settle for, forms the foundation of this hierarchy. The ability to rise from the floor without assistance sits near the top. Research shows that men who can stand from a seated floor position without using their hands live significantly longer than those who cannot. This isn't coincidence. It's a profound indicator of integrated physical function. The rotation of your thoracic spine, so often neglected in conventional training, predicts fall risk more accurately than leg strength. The ability to reach overhead without compensatory movements correlates strongly with maintained independence in later years. These aren't random correlations, they're signposts pointing toward what truly matters in the aging body. When you prioritize movement patterns over muscle building, you're not abandoning fitness. You're embracing a more sophisticated understanding of what fitness actually means after 7 decades of life. Begin each day with what I call the fundamental 5 movements that reclaim what modern life has stolen from your body. A deep squat held for time, a controlled hinge at the hip, a push that engages your shoulders through their full range, a pull that activates the posterior chain, and finally a rotational movement that integrates your spine with your extremities. This isn't a workout in the conventional sense. It's a reclamation of your birthright as a moving being. Start with just 30 seconds of each. Quality trumps quantity absolutely. A perfect squat for 15 seconds delivers more benefit than 10 minutes of compromised movement. The man I mentioned practices these patterns with almost religious devotion. He performs them not as exercise but as ritual, connecting his body to ancestral wisdom that predates barbells and treadmills by millennia. And in doing so, he's maintained a level of physical autonomy that men 20 years his junior envy. The mirror lies to you. It shows only what you look like, not how you move. Record yourself performing these fundamental patterns, then watch with brutal honesty. Can you squat without your knees collapsing inward? Can you hinge at the hip without rounding your lower back? Can you reach overhead without arching excessively? These assessments reveal more about your functional age than any blood test or medical scan. They expose compensations and adaptations that your body has made to work around limitations, and they provide a roadmap for reclaiming movement that serves you. Don't compare yourself to younger men. Compare your movement today to your movement yesterday. This is the only comparison that matters, the only one rooted in truth rather than ego. Improvement at any age is possible, but it begins with honest assessment. The greatest movement program becomes worthless if separated from daily living. This isn't about setting aside an hour for exercise. It's about transforming ordinary activities into opportunities for movement restoration. Stand while taking phone calls. Squat rather than bend when retrieving items from lower shelves. Carry groceries instead of pushing a cart when possible. These aren't inconveniences. They're opportunities to challenge your body in contextually appropriate ways. The integration of movement into daily tasks maintains neural pathways far more effectively than isolated training sessions. The body responds to what it does repeatedly, not what it does occasionally with great intensity. The aging process doesn't demand that you move less, it demands that you move differently, with greater awareness and alignment with your biological design. When you prioritize movement patterns over muscle building, you're not surrendering to age, you're adapting intelligently to it. The focus on functional movement, movements that serve a purpose beyond aesthetic development, represents a fundamental shift in perspective. You're no longer training to look a certain way. You're training to live fully and independently. This isn't a compromise, it's an elevation of purpose. The ability to play with grandchildren on the floor, to travel without physical limitation, to maintain your home without assistance. These functional capacities matter infinitely more than bicep definition or abdominal visibility. This approach honors a simple truth: the goals of youth and the goals of seniority differ fundamentally. In youth, training often centers on performance improvement, aesthetic development, or competitive advancement. After 70, the primary goal becomes the preservation of functional capacity and the extension of independent living. This shift in purpose demands a corresponding shift in methodology. Number 3, recovery-focused training. I once worked with a former Olympic athlete, a man who had pushed his body to extraordinary limits in his youth. Now in his 70s, he came to me not because he couldn't train, but because he couldn't stop. His body was breaking down, yet he continued to punish it daily. His identity was so wrapped up in effort that he couldn't grasp a fundamental truth. After 70, recovery becomes the limiting factor in physical development, not effort. Your body's recovery systems undergo a profound transformation with age. The inflammatory response, once a sharp, efficient process that quickly addressed tissue damage, becomes chronic and prolonged. Hormone cascades that once flooded your system after exertion now trickle. Sleep architecture changes, reducing the deep stages where physical restoration occurs. These aren't weaknesses to overcome through willpower. They're biological realities that demand a completely different approach. The conventional wisdom treats recovery as something that happens between workouts. This is backward thinking for the aging man. After 70, recovery must become the centerpiece around which training revolves. This isn't surrender, it's strategic adaptation based on biological reality. The aging process doesn't just slow recovery, it fundamentally changes its nature. What took 24 hours at 40 may take 72 hours at 70. Ignoring this multiplier effect doesn't make you disciplined, it makes you foolish, accumulating a recovery debt that your body can no longer pay. The young man's body forgives abuse. The older man's body remembers everything. This isn't philosophy, it's physiology. After decades of living, your connective tissues, nervous system, and endocrine system have accumulated a history of stresses. This history doesn't disappear with a good night's sleep or a protein shake. High-intensity training creates a cascade of stress responses designed to produce adaptation. But these adaptations require resources that diminish with age. Your body must choose between repair and growth, and after 70, repair takes precedence. Pushing intensity at the expense of recovery doesn't create growth, it accelerates breakdown. I see men in their 70s grimacing through workouts, equating suffering with virtue. This isn't virtue, it's vanity masquerading as discipline. True discipline at this stage means having the courage to train less intensely but more intelligently, to rest more deliberately, to measure progress not by how much you can endure, but by how well you can recover. The recovery to stimulus ratio that served you at 40 might have been 1:1. At 70 it might be 3:1 or even 4. This isn't weakness, it's mathematics. Ignoring this ratio doesn't make you mentally tough. It makes you statistically certain to break down. Begin thinking of exercise as a withdrawal from your recovery account. Every movement, every exertion costs something. The question becomes not how hard can I push today, but how much can I afford to withdraw without creating a deficit I cannot repay. Create a hierarchy of stress. A 20-minute walk represents a small withdrawal. A session of loaded movement patterns takes more. High-intensity intervals or heavy resistance training extract the highest cost. After 70, you can no longer afford daily major withdrawals. The account simply won't support it. Implement what I call minimum effective dose training. Determine the least amount of stimulus required to maintain function, then stop there. This isn't laziness, it's precision. The gap between what stimulates adaptation and what causes breakdown narrows dramatically with age. Your goal is to live within that narrowing gap. Practice active recovery modalities daily. Gentle movement that promotes circulation without creating additional damage. Contrast therapy that enhances blood flow to tissues. myofascial release techniques that maintain tissue quality without overtaxing repair mechanisms. These aren't optional supplements to training, they become the foundation upon which limited high-intensity work occasionally rests. The former Olympian eventually embraced this approach, not without resistance. His breakthrough came when he realized his goal had changed. He was no longer training for performance but for longevity. This paradigm shift transformed his relationship with recovery from something he endured to something he cultivated. Most men measure the wrong variables. They track weights lifted, distances covered, times achieved. After 70, these metrics become not just irrelevant but dangerous. The true measure becomes how completely you recover between sessions. Monitor your resting heart rate upon waking. An elevation of more than 5 beats above your baseline indicates incomplete recovery. Track your grip strength. It decreases markedly when systemic recovery is compromised. Assess joint stiffness each morning. It speaks volumes about your body's inflammatory state. Keep a recovery journal. Rate your energy, sleep quality, and joint comfort daily on a simple 1 to 10 scale. Patterns will emerge that reveal the true cost of different activities. This isn't obsession, it's objective data gathering that removes ego from the equation. Your body craves rhythm far more than intensity. Establish a weekly pattern that honors the reality of extended recovery needs. Perhaps Monday involves gentle movement patterns. Tuesday introduces moderate resistance. Wednesday returns to restorative practices. This undulating approach maintains function without creating recovery debt. The sustainable rhythm isn't just physical, it's psychological. The hardest adaptation for most aging men isn't learning new exercises but unlearning the belief that more is always better. This might be the most profound mental shift required, redefining progress as sustainable function rather than continuous improvement. Remember that recovery isn't passive, it's an active process requiring as much attention as training itself. Sleep becomes not a necessity to endure, but a powerful tool to cultivate. Nutrition shifts from fueling workouts to facilitating repair. Stress management becomes not complementary but central to physical capacity. Proper recovery-focused training becomes injury prevention in its most effective form. By honoring your body's needs for restoration, you're not just avoiding acute injuries, you're preventing the chronic degeneration that often defines aging. This approach extends not just your active years, but the quality of those years. Number 4, mind-body integration. I met him at a lecture in Vancouver, a man in his mid-80s who moved with more grace and presence than men half his age. He hadn't touched a weight in decades. His practice was entirely centered on what modern exercise culture dismisses as soft skills, breath work, tai chi, meditative movement. The integration of mind and body had preserved what isolated physical training destroys in aging men, the neural connections that maintain coordination, balance, and spatial awareness. The neurological benefits of mind-body practices aren't mystical, they're measurable. Brain imaging reveals that practices like Tai Chi and yoga activate neural pathways that conventional exercise simply doesn't touch. The prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for executive function, shows enhanced activity during mindful movement that doesn't occur during mindless repetitions. This isn't incidental. After 70, neurological decline typically outpaces muscular decline. You don't lose function primarily because muscles weaken. You lose it because the complex neural networks governing movement fragment and disconnect. Conventional training does almost nothing to address this fundamental problem. Mind-body practices target it directly. The integration of attention and movement creates what neuroscientists call myelination, the strengthening of neural pathways through focused use. Each mindful movement reinforces the connection between intention and action, between thought and physical expression. This isn't supplementary to physical training after 70, it becomes the primary mechanism for maintaining function. The conventional approach to fitness fragments the human being into parts: cardiovascular system, muscular system, skeletal system. This reductionist thinking might serve the young but devastates the old. The aging body cannot be trained in pieces. It must be engaged as a unified whole. Mind-body integration practices recognize what exercise science is only beginning to acknowledge, that movement quality depends more on neural coordination than on muscular force. After 7 decades, the limiting factor in physical function isn't how strong your muscles are, it's how effectively your nervous system can recruit and coordinate them. The man I mentioned practiced a form of movement that emphasized awareness over effort. Each gesture, each transition contained a quality of attention that transformed simple movement into neural reinforcement. He wasn't exercising in the conventional sense, he was rewiring his nervous system daily through conscious movement. This approach addresses what might be the most overlooked aspect of aging: proprioception, your sense of where your body exists in space. This sense deteriorates dramatically with age when not specifically maintained. Conventional exercise does almost nothing to preserve it. Mind-body practices make it central. The diminishment of proprioception explains why so many aging men move with hesitation and fear. They literally don't know where their limbs are without looking at them. No amount of strength training fixes this problem. Only movement practices that deliberately integrate sensory awareness with motor output can restore this essential capacity. Begin with what I call sensory scanning, a daily practice of systematically bringing awareness to each part of your body while lying still. This isn't relaxation, it's neural mapping, maintaining the brain's internal model of your physical form. 5 minutes daily prevents the proprioceptive deterioration that leads to falls and injury. Progress to mindful walking, not just movement from point A to B, but conscious attention to the process itself. Feel the transfer of weight from heel to toe. Notice the subtle shifts in your center of gravity. Experience the rhythmic alternation of stability and mobility. This transforms an ordinary activity into neural training of the highest order. Incorporate practices like Tai Chi or Qigong that deliberately slow movement to enhance awareness. These aren't merely cultural traditions, they're sophisticated systems for maintaining neural integration that modern exercise science is only beginning to understand. The slowness isn't weakness, it's deliberate intensity of attention that strengthens neural pathways far more effectively than mindless repetitions. Explore the practice of resistance awareness, applying just enough tension and movement to engage proprioceptors without creating unnecessary stress. This isn't about how much weight you move, it's about how precisely you can feel the movement itself. The aging nervous system responds more to consciousness than to force. That man in Vancouver demonstrated a principle that should be carved into the walls of every gym. After 70, how you move matters infinitely more than how much you move. The quality of attention you bring to movement determines its benefit far more than the resistance it overcomes. Abandon the metrics that served you in youth: weight lifted, distance covered, time elapsed. These tell you nothing about neural integration. Instead, assess balance with a single leg stance test. Measure coordination through hand-eye tasks. Evaluate movement quality through the precision of gesture. Track cognitive measures alongside physical ones. The mind-body connection works both ways. Improved neural integration enhances cognitive function just as it improves movement quality. Note changes in your mental clarity, emotional regulation, and sleep quality as you adopt these practices. Monitor what I call your startle threshold, how easily you're thrown off balance by unexpected stimuli. This reveals more about your functional capacity than any strength test. Mind-body practices progressively reduce this threshold, creating a nervous system that responds to challenge with adaptation rather than disruption. The Vancouver practitioner measured his progress not by what he could still do from youth, but by what he could do with greater awareness than ever before. This shift in perspective transforms the experience of aging from loss to evolution, not diminishment but transformation of capacity. Progression in mind-body practice doesn't follow the linear path of conventional training. You don't simply add weight or repetitions. You deepen awareness, you enhance the quality of attention, you increase the subtlety of perception. This isn't measurable on any conventional scale, yet the functional results speak for themselves. Begin with structured practices that provide clear guidelines: formal Tai Chi sequences, basic yoga postures, guided proprioceptive exercises. These create the foundation. As integration improves, the distinction between exercise and daily movement gradually dissolves. Every action becomes an opportunity for mindful engagement. The key principle is what Eastern traditions call beginner's mind, approaching each movement with fresh attention regardless of how many times you've performed it. This isn't philosophy, it's practical neurology. The aging nervous system responds more to novelty of attention than to novelty of movement. What you're cultivating isn't just physical capacity, it's the integration of sensing, feeling, thinking, and moving that defines full human function. This integration doesn't deteriorate with age unless neglected. Mind-body practices maintain it where conventional exercise cannot. The man from Vancouver shared his secret. "I don't exercise my body," he told me. "I inhabit it more completely each day." This isn't mysticism, it's the most practical approach to maintaining function through your 70s, 80s, and beyond. What you're really creating isn't a training program, but a relationship with physical practice that can evolve through your remaining decades. Not something you force yourself to do, but something that becomes as natural and necessary as eating or sleeping. This integration into life's rhythm, not discipline or motivation, creates true sustainability. Your remaining years can be spent fighting against your nature or working with it. That choice defines not just your physical capacity, but your dignity. The wisdom to adapt isn't surrender, it's the ultimate form of self-respect. Ask yourself, will you have the courage to change?